please stop scrolling. What you're about to learn has taken me almost 40 years of real estate investing. Since the age of 14, I've been buying, renovating, and renting real estate. Now in 5 different continents, 15 countries. I've helped the number 1 or number 2 real estate developer grow their businesses. We've done over $6 billion in real estate. But the innovation you're going to learn about today is incredible. This is the most important development in real estate in over 40 years, and I'm so excited you're going to join me. So I'll tell you why I think people should consider Costa Rica if they haven't been there already. It's an incredible place. They have, from a natural environment perspective, the biodiversity, there's nothing like it on Earth. It's literally going into paradise. It's a country that gave up its military, 50 years ago. Instead of investing in military, they gave all that money to healthcare and education. So everyone in Costa Rica can get a university education basically for free. So you have the best, their literacy rate is higher than Canada or the United States. So you have an incredibly well-educated population. It's a peaceful community. There's a saying they call pura vida, and these people are just happy. They're the happiest people in the world. Every time they do a survey of the happiest people on earth, it's Costa Rica always wins. So it's much less expensive, lower cost of living. They have incredible weather. So I'll give you, I own some homes in different parts of Costa Rica, but let me give you an example of the weather. So if you flew into San Jose, which is the major airport, that area, they have these microclimates, which means literally it's like you have the same perfect day every day, 365 days a year. They don't have hurricanes. They don't have some of the natural disasters we have in other parts of the world. So you have this incredibly perfect weather, 365 days a year, lower cost of living, very low property taxes. Super low compared to what we're used to in North America. And the happiest people in the world. And by the way, they also have the longest longevity. So not only are they happier, they live longer than us as North Americans. So, and one of the reasons is they don't really know what organic food is because they don't put any chemicals and pesticides all over their produce. So unlike us, they don't poison their food. So I know friends of mine that started living there in a few months, all these health problems they suffered with their entire life vanished. And I'd ask them, what did you do differently? Different medications, different doctors? No, they're like, literally, I stopped taking all my medications because all my symptoms went away. Things that they dealt with their entire life. Why? Because they're not poisoning the food in Costa Rica. So there's a lot of benefits to Costa Rica, but I would say we've got direct flights from most cities in the world, easy to get to, again, super safe, very inexpensive, and it's really paradise. So yeah, that was some of the key reasons that I decided to invest in Costa Rica and homes in Costa Rica. Yeah, so let's talk about that. So everybody I know suffers from more anxiety, more depression than any time in history, and the pandemic has caused a lot of it. But here's what we do know: a lot of it's based on our environment. So if you're in an environment which doesn't get a lot of sunshine for 6 months, you will get depressed. If you don't wake up in the morning and if you don't get actual natural sunlight, you are going to be much sadder and less happy than people that actually got up in the morning, actually got natural light. So as human beings, we know our body requires certain things. But if you live in a climate where you don't get sunshine every day, where you've got this gray weather and it's not conducive to going outside, you don't even want to go outside for a walk, a lot of people suffer from anxiety and depression, much more so in winter than they would in the summer. Now, when you live in an environment where you wake up in the morning and you put your shorts and t-shirt on, you're outside, it's beautiful, and you want to be outside, you're much more likely to be more active. You might be walking more, you're going to be jogging more. Overlay that with better food that's not poison, is not full of chemicals and pesticides and herbicides. All of a sudden, the health benefits, things that people suffered with, and they're maybe taking anti-anxiety or anti-depression things, they don't need to do that anymore. Literally, the environment changes that. So I think for anyone that suffers from any of these things, or people have arthritis, all of a sudden you go into an environment where all of a sudden aches and pains go away. I learned this from my grandmother. My grandmother had terrible arthritis, but she went to Florida 6 months a year. She was a snowbird, and she felt better because when she was in Florida, as opposed to being in the Canadian winters, all of a sudden those aches and pains didn't feel as bad. So I do think that a lot of our healthcare isn't about taking more pills. The pharmaceutical companies have done a great job of forcing us to take more pills, but Usually the answer is walking in nature. It's very hard to be depressed or sad walking in nature, especially if you're walking in Costa Rica and you see a waterfall and you see monkeys and you see birds and species you didn't even know existed. It blows your mind. When you wake up in the morning and you hear that, it's really hard to be sad. It's really hard to be depressed. And again, it's hard to quantify these things. There's not a lot of research because pharmaceutical companies are great at research, spend a lot of money on convincing us we need more drugs. And there's not a lot of environmentalists that are funding surveys about, hey, go for a walk and you'll feel better. There's not a lot of surveys you're going to read about that. But I can tell you from the people that I know that have second homes in these warmer climates and better destinations, they're happier. And they're less stressed and they have a higher quality of life. They got better relationship with their kids. They have a lower divorce rate. There's a lot of benefits that happen when you're in these communities. So I think that the overriding statistic for Costa Rica is you've got the happiest people in the world with it's one of the 6 blue zones in the world where people live to over 100. Yeah, and they're social, they're happy. So Costa Rica is one of the 6 blue zones in the world. So I'm a big fan of Costa Rica. And the other one I want to just mention is Mexico. So a lot of us, Mexico is a huge country. It's a massive country, 80 million people. And sometimes, because our media is very tainted, it's all negative. It's like, if the cartel did something, like all you read about. But statistically speaking, if you really realize how safe some of those cities are in Mexico, they're safer than most North American cities. I mean, if you took, there's an area in Orlando, Florida called Kissimmee. And so most people have been through Orlando, been to Kissimmee. If you look at the stats of Kissimmee and the odds of you getting killed or, murdered in Kissimmee versus like Mexico City, it's actually more dangerous to be there, or Chicago or New York right now. So again, a lot of the perceptions we have about danger are skewed by our media. So I'll tell you about an area that we have homes in, which I think is incredible. You fly into Mexico, you fly to Cancun. Cancun's one of the biggest airports in the country. Tons of daily flights into Cancun from every city in the world, very inexpensive. And then from the airport, it's about 20 minutes to a ferry. And there's ferries every 30 minutes. There's several ferries. And we go to a place called Isla Mujeres. And it's one of the most beautiful islands in the world. It's on the Caribbean. You see colors of the ocean you've never seen. It's where the Mayan ruins are, has thousands of years of history. It's the most eastern place of Mexico. So it's where the sun rises, where the first place in Mexico you'd see the sun rise. It's this majestic place. It's safer than Toronto. It's just a magic place. And we have homes there starting at, Casaco homes that the fractions will start at $125,000. So these are places that you couldn't think of a nicer place to go to a beach. You couldn't think of a nicer place to go scuba diving or sailing in. I mean, this is like as good as it gets on planet Earth, and we've made it affordable through Casaco. And what's great about Casaco is you can have an eighth of a home in Isla Mujeres, and you can own an eighth of a home in Blue Mountain, or own an eighth of a home in Muskoka or in Costa Rica, all for less than half of a home that you're buying yourself, without any hassle, without any maintenance. Yeah, it is an investment because look, we all know that over time real estate goes up in value. Real estate also goes on a short-term basis and go down. And any times you see second home markets that are up 50%, you should be nervous about that. If anything, I'd be buying a fraction of a home right now, not 100%, because what if the market corrects? What if all these interest rates that are going up, what if all of a sudden there's a 20% dip? I would rather own a fraction of a property, like an eighth of a property, than 100% if it's going to fall 20%. So, it's like a risk mitigation. So owning an eighth of a property, not only is it make more sense in terms of how much you're going to use it, because most of us don't have more than 6 weeks to use at a vacation home, but also from an economic perspective, from a diversification perspective, from taking less risk, it makes a whole lot more sense. So imagine you were to buy a cottage right now in Muskoka. There's really nothing under $2 million. But what if all of a sudden, for whatever reason, the cottage falls down, let's say 20%, which is not weird because it went up 50% in 2 years. So if it fell 20%, that's not too crazy. But if you just invested $2 million in a property and it fell 20%, you just lost $400,000. And people don't realize that when real estates do go through cycles, it could take 10, 13 years to go back to the value again. It always goes up back. But for example, in Toronto, if you'd bought in the late 90s, it would take you 13 years to get your money back. Same things happen in Muskoka. So remember that when you buy real estate, it's a great asset long-term, but there are some short-term dips that you could be losing money at. But if you want to have a place that you enjoy with your family and you don't want to be, worried about like something going up 20% or down 20%, owning an eighth of a property or half a property or quarter property makes a whole lot more sense.